Thank you, Brett. Welcome to the service of worship at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church on this cold Sunday morning. Our minister, Daniel Williams, has COVID, and so he is not here, but lest you worry, he is on the uphill mend and will be back with us next week. In this time, it does our hearts good to see all of these faces. We are so tired of COVID and not being able to worship together, but it's so wonderful to see all of your faces. We ask that each of you put your name in the Zoom if you are joining us through Zoom, or on the friendship pad if you're joining us through Facebook. And we especially welcome our friends today who joined us in our Sunday school class led by Reverend Dr. David Zuniga on Thich Nhat Hanh. We lost him this week, and we had a wonderful class, and a number of people who were new to our group joined us for that class and may be joining us today. And with that, we ask that we all begin to prepare for worship.
Good morning, y'all. Join me in our call to community. It is through the simple things of life that we are nourished. In silence and celebration, our spirits are nourished. In contemplation and conversation, our minds are nourished. In relationship and solitude, our hearts are nourished. May we find in the simplicity of ritual nourishment for the unfolding days. And may we sense connection through the gifts we share. As light into light, we pour ourselves. May it be so. Amen.
Well, it's time for our first song. We hope that wherever you are, you can be comfortable singing, and we'll go ahead and join in as if we were all together. And we look forward to the time that we hear each other's voices rather than see our mouths moving, but we can still join together and experience community together as we sing. Marilyn will lead us in More Fire, More Breath, More Light.
Our centering time this morning is by J. Andrew and C. Gilbert. Let me find you in the spaces in between, between the clouds and leaves, against the blue sky, between the tall grass blades, sprawling through the hills. Let me search for you between the spaces of hills and valleys, between rivers and waves of the ocean that fall between tears of broken hearts. I keep looking for you there where you greet me with a smile, where you hug me with warmth and a breeze of delight, where you teach me about how everything exists beyond myself. Your smile greets me with joy. I find joy in you, for you are always there.
Let's prepare to hear the meaning of our scripture this morning by singing our musical prayer for illumination.
Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path.
Our scripture reading this morning comes from John. The next time Jesus spoke to them, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me won't walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. The Pharisees said to him, You're testifying about yourself, so your testimony isn't valid. Jesus replied, Even if I do testify about myself, my testimony is valid because I know where I came from and where I am going. But you know neither where I come from nor where I am going. You people judge by external things. I don't judge anyone at all. But even if I were to judge, my judgment would be true because I am not alone in it. The one who sent me joins in that judgment. Even in the law, it is written that it takes 2 witnesses for testimony to be admissible. Well, I bear witness about myself, and my heavenly parent who sent me bears witness about me as well. They asked Jesus, "Where is this heavenly parent of yours?" Jesus replied, "You don't know me, nor do you know my heavenly parent. If you knew me, you would know my heavenly parent as well." Jesus spoke these words in front of the temple treasury. While he was teaching, no one seized him because his hour had not yet come. Ancient words from our tradition for our present day understanding.
Thank you for being here today. Like Carol said, it's just great to spend time and get to like scan and see the faces, or at least the names. By the way, if you're new, I have a chronic cough that bothered me for years. Then I got rid of it, and it popped back recently after my booster shot. But I do not have COVID. Don't worry about that. What I want to talk today about is another one of the I am sayings. We've been looking at them from different angles. I want to start sort of my memory of being a child. I wanted to see God so bad I could taste it. That may not sound like me now, but when I was a kid, that just was more important than anything. And I when I got to college, I fasted and I prayed and I, did different, the different religions of the world, trying to figure out something that would, make me feel that spiritual presence. As a kid, it's embarrassing now, but as a kid, I remember doing one of my prayers was holding a rock at arm's length and letting it go and asking God, just for one moment, show me that there's something there, that I haven't been talking to nothingness all this time. And I didn't realize that my idea of the sacred, what I've been taught in Sunday school, had become a problem, that I was looking for God like you look for Waldo in the little cartoon books. I'd been taught a reduced image of the sacred. The word God is a symbol of something. So it's a symbol of mystery. It's a symbol of vastness, of depth. But when you think of God as a person, as a being, that becomes a trap, because now you're stuck in the world of space and time. And what the symbol is trying to give you is a sense of transcendence. There's something deeper. There's something broader than my little life. But again, I was taught an incredibly immature idea of God, and it trapped me. I couldn't find my way out of it, because once you're looking through these judgments that you've been taught, you can't find the leverage to get out of that. It was like a mousetrap. What we're looking at in this series of I am sayings is what I think is a brilliant symbol intended to shatter any image that you have of the sacred. We forget that the second commandment is against worshiping our images of God. And Christianity is terribly bad about that, of trying to reduce God to a humanoid being. It's a human being, although it's invisible, it has no shape. We say it's everywhere. Doesn't sound like a human being to me. So if God has shape, then that's being stuck in space. If God does something in history, that's being reduced to time. So what I believe the symbol of God, as the Jewish people understood it, was pointing beyond our senses into a sense of depth, into a sense of largeness, of interconnectedness. That's the symbol for me begins with the burning bush. This idea, Moses is wondering, he's lost, he doesn't know what to do with his life. And he walks along and he sees this bush that's burning. Now, I believe that it was an ordinary bush. I believe that what he had was a spiritual experience. in the East is sometimes called enlightenment, where he realized that every being that's alive is in flame, it's burning. Life is a combustion, but there's something bigger than that, deeper than that happening through all of us. And the name that Moses heard in the burning bush was basically the verb to be. It gets translated, I am what I am. But the way I was taught in seminary was it's sort of the verb to be that's reduced in a way where you don't know if it's I am, we are, we will be, he, she, it, that it's this pulsing sense of life and of being. And you're not supposed to say that name. It's supposed to point you towards the mystery, but you're never supposed to think that you've somehow copyrighted, that you've got this rigid concrete image of it. Because once we reduce this transcendent to our senses, we're lost. But who doesn't feel the need to try to do that? It's like it's so comforting to turn the sacred into something that you can hold in your hand, or a being that you can touch or talk to. And there's nothing wrong with those images as long as they're leading us deeper. So what happened then after the Jewish text, before when the Christian text was written, there was a mystical form of Judaism. And they came up with these wonderful, wonderful sayings, I am sayings. They were often tied to a female version of wisdom that was called Sophia. The texts had been converted into Greek from the Hebrew. And so a lot of the more Greek kind of ideas became something they would play with, because you can't really understand a mystery. So you have to be playful in order to stay close to that kind of seething, pulsing something that we're talking about when we use the symbol God. When the Christian text was written, they, particularly John, lifted those sayings by Sophia and transformed them to what was called the Logos. And the I am sayings were born, which is, again, the Greek translation of this Hebrew idea of a mystery that you cannot put into words. So when Jesus is talking, the reason we're looking at all 8 of the I am sayings is it doesn't reduce to any particular religious understanding. And when you study the religions of the world, you're going to have a much, much bigger Christianity than if you've only been taught, the cultural religion of your own time. So Jesus is usually when you look at John, it looks like they're having a schoolyard spat where the religious leaders are saying that Jesus has a demon, or that he's born illegitimately, that he doesn't know his parents are. And then it looks like he's just returning in kind and saying, well, your parents are of the devil, and you don't know where you came from, and I do. And I don't judge anybody, but you judge by the senses. This sounds like a schoolyard fight. What I think we need to realize is John is doing something more like Plato did. He's doing a dialogue where the religious figures that he's using represent traditional, literal, magical religion, and Jesus represents transcendent, mystical, and universal understanding. That when he says I am, and he's going to say it different ways. We've seen once where he said I'm like bread, which you don't see anybody saying, well, that means you can put butter on Jesus. He says he's going to say today that that the way is like light. And last week we looked at the strangest one of all, which is before Abraham was, I am, which should tell you that this is not literal. This is poetry, but it's mystical poetry. So I think the point that Jesus is trying to say here is, you think, he's saying to these religious people, you think you love God, but if you don't love me as the offspring of God, as the child of God, and the way he's saying it is son of God, but this represents everybody everywhere all the time. That if you can't love the children, you can't really love the parent. I mean, most loving balanced parents would rather you hate them and love the children than to love them and hate the children. And Jesus is saying, if you want to find the root of your being, the ground of your being, that which connects you to every other being in the universe, this is how you do it. So what he's doing is creating a kind of a theological diamond, and each facet reveals a different aspect of the enlightenment experience he's trying to get across. But they contradict each other because life doesn't fit in any theology or philosophy. That's a spoiler alert if you're just going into religion or philosophy school. So what he's going to say in the argument, the theological people are thinking literally, he is a mystic Jewish person, and the mysticism of his day and the centuries before Christianity, he's putting that, at least John is, into this kind of poem. And he says in our passage today, our I am passage is, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. That's kind of interesting how John weaves things like life and light and these kinds of things. There was a saying of the Sophia passages that says the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, and righteous meant just. It didn't mean moralistic. So let me read it like that. The path of the just is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter into the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. When we're lost in our sense judgments, we keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and we blame it on something else. We don't realize that we're hurting ourselves in many ways. So this idea of light, particularly when it's not something that you can see, what John is trying to get across, I think, is that what the sacred is symbolized by is not something you can see, but that by which you see. Yesterday, I was looking for my glasses. I don't know if this ever happened to you, but I finally realized I was wearing them as I'm looking. That's when we look for God, and we forget the idea that we're talking about the source of our being. We're not talking about a being that you're going to find somewhere out in the world, but the source of our being. When we remember that, then we can see it all around us. So it's you don't pull out your eyes so you can see how you see. In the same way, the symbol God is not an object that you're going to find in space and time. It's a symbol of that beyond and within space and time. So when you realize that, you're going to see it everywhere. But until then, it feels like darkness. One of the symbols that's here, I believe, in the mystery religions that we don't realize just in the English is when Jesus talks about the devil. And again, this is John speaking for Jesus. But in a lot of these mystical religions, the devil symbolized dualism. It represented seeing the world concretely without ever getting the large picture. The reason the symbol has cloven hooves and a pitchfork is it represents dualism. The word literally means to cast in two. D-I-A, it means two. B-O-L, we get ball from it, or ballistic, it means to throw something. So when our thought takes over and we lose our roots into nature, into life, into the cosmos, we're lost in a certain way. And one of the things that leads us to our roots is this sense of illumination. Jesus is saying that the source is like a light. You can't see it, but it still illumines your path. Because the wisdom represents the patterning of things. And one thing that has to be true is the universe consists of patterns. There may not be a brainiac sitting there planning everything, but the universe has mathematical patterns to it, principles to it. And when you realize that, those patterns are everywhere. They're like sort of the fingerprints of the sacred. I've said before, if you were in a Van Gogh painting and you were looking for Van Gogh within that painting, looking for the person Van Gogh, you'd be really lost. But as soon as you realize that everything there was an expression of Van Gogh, that would be very different. You'd see the fingerprints all over the painting. David, could you put up Starry Night? Thank you. You're ahead of me. This is Van Gogh's painting of the sky. Now that's amazing to me. And I feel like whoever came up with the symbol of the burning bush was trying to say that they were feeling something behind what they were experiencing sensually. They were experiencing something transcendent that spoke to them through that bush. And I think that's what Van Gogh is trying to communicate with the sky, with the flowers. He said, there's a beam in our eye that we can't see. They're in other words, saying sort of the same thing. There's a light by which we see that we can't see, but we can feel it. We can express it. When we're creative, the cosmic creativity comes out. And you look at those patterns. I don't know if you remember when they first showed the clouds on Jupiter, that struck me incredibly because it looked like something Van Gogh would have come up with. And there's some that are bluer that you just see. It's like the starry night with those swirls, those vortexes. In the ancient world, the word for parent, for father, meant the source of things. And in the Hermetic writings, that was both male and female and beyond either one of them. But it was that vortex out of which we come. We can't, it's like a black hole. You can't see into the source of your being, the ground of your being, but you can realize that you're an expression of that. And the symbol of that was the cup, of that vortex, those spirals that you're seeing all over Van Gogh's paintings and over this. This is a kind of intuitive understanding that we are the expressions of that we're looking for when we look for the sacred. When Jesus held up the cup at communion, in this mystical language, if he was speaking that way, that represents that vortex. He said, whenever you drink from this cup, you'll never thirst again. And he's arguing with people and he says, I know where I'm coming from and where I'm going. You don't. And then he uses the image of a parent in that way. Another picture Paul Davis sent me of bacteria. Even at that level, you see these spirals, these swirling kinds of things. And in chaos theory, there's this idea of the fractals, the patterns that are embedded in, they're not things in nature, but they're the nature of the world for these patterns to occur and to reoccur. So this is a lot of what, thank you, David. This is what a lot of the scripture, I believe, is trying to communicate with us. Listen to Psalm 19. It says the path, that's the other one. Psalm 19 says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of God's hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. What Jesus is saying is, if you want to know the source, then look at the children, look at the expressions, look at the manifestations. When Van Gogh said the way to know God is to love many things, I think that's sort of what Jesus is saying in this passage. The more you can love me, he was saying, the more you can understand the ground of your being. But that was also true of every being, not just Jesus. When Jesus is on the cross, he represents suffering people all over the world, all through time. It represents the brokenheartedness of love. Again, I come at this from world religions. And so I see this pattern all over the world too. This is from Taoism, which is a nature religion. They don't usually put this path. Tao means the way. And it's a natural thing. It's the way of things in that religion. But in this particular poem, number 52, Lao Tzu puts the same kind of parent imagery to help people understand the roots of their being. John begins off, in the beginning was the word. This poem begins, in the beginning was the way, was the Tao. There's a place in the Rig Veda that I love that says, in the beginning was the word, and the word was Om. So you see these patterns all over the world. And this one, it says, in the beginning was the way, all things issue from it, all things return to it. To find the origin, trace back the manifestations. When you recognize the children, you will find the mother. You will be free of sorrow. If you close your mind in judgments and traffic with desires, your heart will be troubled. If you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by the senses, your heart will find peace. Seeing into the darkness is clarity. Knowing how to yield is strength. Use your own light and return to the source of light. This is called practicing eternity. A lot of my youth was this tortured search for God. Again, I was looking for somebody like Waldo. And I didn't have the background. I never ran across a religion that taught that God doesn't have to be a being. God can be the ground of being. And more than that, it can be the source out of which being comes, that mysterious source. Then you don't have to come up with images of it. Then you don't have to say it has a name, but you can also recognize it all around you. When I was in my first year of college, I had an experience, or an insight anyway, where, I'd searched so passionately for God, and I'm sitting there praying and I'm getting angry, and, I'm doing all these wonderful things. Why aren't you showing yourself to me, God? And I think I was just so desperate. My mind, or whatever wisdom was in me, spoke up, but it sounded like an external voice. And it said, I am everywhere. Ask instead why you can't see me. That was a transformative moment in my search. I don't think that there was an external being necessarily saying that. I think that that insight was coming from the inside out. I am everywhere. Ask instead why you can't see me. We can't see God because what the symbol is talking about is that which helps us to see in the first place. And we can't see the source of all beings, but when we love each of those beings, we see those fingerprints everywhere. We see that manifestation everywhere. We see it in Jesus, but we see it in Buddha. We see it in Lao Tzu. We see it in all of the offspring, every person, every animal, every plant, every starry night. The sacred isn't something we can see because it's transcendent. When we reduce it to our senses so that we can understand it, we get lost in our judgments. We fall into a mousetrap that's very hard to get out of. But if we remember where we're coming from, this mysterious something, if we remember we were living in that, if we remember to that we return, then we can see wisdom's fingerprints everywhere. Well, this is my understanding of our story today. We'll take a minute now for you to contemplate on how you would understand it in your own words.
Our song is one that I found it odd that we haven't used it at St. Andrews before, but it's very easy to pick up, and it's been around a long time. Some of you may have heard it before. I remember singing it in my past. Came out in about 1969. It's a Jim Strathby song that kind of puts into a few words Jesus being the light of the world, but we learn by following what our purpose is and are able to see the sacred in the world, as Jim mentioned this morning. So it's called I Am the Light of the World. Marilyn will lead us.
Jesus said, come and follow me. If you follow and love, you'll learn the mystery of what you were meant to do and be. To find the lost and lonely one, to heal the broken soul with love, to feed hungry children with earth and good food, to feel the earth below the sky above. I am the light of the world. Jesus said, come and follow me. If you follow and love, you'll learn the mystery of what you were meant to do and be. To free the prisoner from all chains, to make the powerful care, to lead nations with strength and goodwill, to see God's children everywhere. I am the light of the world. Jesus said, come and follow me. If you follow and love, you'll learn the mystery of what you were meant to do and be. To bring hope to every task you do, to make dance and babies new birth, to make music in a person's heart, to sing to the colors of the earth. I am the light of the world. Jesus said, come and follow me. If you follow and love, you learn the mystery of what you were meant to do and be. To bring hope to every task you do, to dance at a baby's new birth, to make music in a person's heart and sing to the colors of the earth. Jesus said, come and follow me. If you follow and love, you'll learn the mystery of what you were meant to do and be.
Our offering time is a good time to think of what we are grateful for, the blessings in our lives. Daniel and I had a conversation not long ago about the difference between habits and ritual. Habits are things that we do without thinking. Rituals are things we do that give meaning to our lives. So I want to challenge you to, when we come to our offering time, to make it a ritual and not a habit. It may be something that in the order of worship we just gloss over, and it's just a thing that we ask for support, and then we move on through the worship service. But it can be a ritual that has meaning if we are grateful for what we have and we seriously look at how we can make the world a better place. And that's not always monetarily. If you can afford it and would like to support the ministries of St. Andrew's, we certainly really appreciate that. You can do that by clicking on a link in the chat. It's also, there's a link on our website. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link below. But also looking at other ways that we can contribute to the happiness around us, sometimes just by our presence, by our prayers, by our talents. So use this time to be grateful for what we have and see how we can make the world a more just, loving, and compassionate place.
And wonder, gratitude, deep thanksgiving, see gifts and blessings, love we tell, Spirit bring, all is well. Spirit bring, all is well.
Friends, as we come together during our prayer time, we start out, as always, with the concerns of our congregation. We are concerned for all those being treated for COVID, especially Lisa, Daniel, Bill, the uncle of David and great uncle of Aaron, and Deborah, the aunt of Becky and Justin, who will be taken off life support care. We think of all those undergoing treatment for cancer, others recovering from symptoms related to cancer treatment, of Bob recovering from a heart procedure, of Suze with advanced cancer, of Roger on hospice care, of Frank on hospice care, of Joe in declining health, and James recovering from surgery. Our healthcare system is in crisis, and we are mindful of all who work in healthcare and those in supportive services for healthcare, and for the teachers who are working to keep our children safe, students, parents, teachers, all stressed by the threat of COVID. And we hold all those who are dealing with COVID, fear, anxiety, and sadness that has become this season. We mourn with those who have lost loved ones. There are over 864,000 deaths in our country to date. We also keep in mind the 102 households, one of them new, who were given food by our congregation this week. We provided food for 409 people, and we are so thankful for those workers. And so, friends, we come together in prayer. We're tired. Some of the things we may be tired of, we're tired of COVID. We're tired of cancer. We're tired of cedar. We're tired of not having enough money. We're tired of our grief. We're tired of the forces that cause people to be hungry and wait in line in front of our church for boxes of food. We're tired of people taking away voting rights and rights to make decisions about our own bodies. We're tired of homelessness. We're tired of people ignoring the Earth's climate crisis. Fill in whatever you are tired of. And now let's breathe in things that are energizing. As I say, breathe in, do so. And then breathe out to be ready to take in another breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in the brilliance of the wolf moon this week. Breathe out. Breathe in the comfort of a hot shower. Breathe in the deliciousness of sleep. Breathe in the beauty of Van Gogh's Starry Night. Breathe in the gratitude for those who worked in the cold yesterday morning to distribute food. Breathe out. Breathe in gratitude for all the work that others are doing to help eliminate what we are tired of. Breathe in thanks for the ability to say, "Help me," to friends and to get their help. Breathe in gratitude for the life and works of Thich Nhat Hanh. Breathe in the love of the divine life force for you, even when you're tired. And finally, breathe in the to be that Jim talked about, and keep it with you as you breathe out. And let us pray together the disciples' prayer as translated by the Open Door community in Atlanta. Our beloved friend, outside the domination system, may your holy name be honored by the way we live our lives. Your beloved community, come. Guide us to walk your walk, talk your talk, sit in your silence, inside the courtroom, on the streets, in the jailhouses, as they are on the margins of resistance. Give us this day everything we need. Forgive us our wrongs as we forgive those who have wronged us. Do not bring us to hard testing, but keep us safe from the evil one. For thine is the beloved community, the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
thank you again one last time for your presence here today. We normally have breakouts after church. David, are you able to pull that off? Okay, so after church, if you'd like to make some new friends, we have a little, like for 10 minutes, we have a little room that you can meet people and check up on them. So I said, thank you for being here. And thank you, Carol, for that prayer. That was, if we were able to do applause, I think that was what like all of us are feeling right now. It was just a wonderful, very gracious Thich Nhat Hanh like prayer. And the reason I am thinking of Thich Nhat Hanh is that he passed away. And for many of you, he's like a life teacher. He's Buddhist. The person that Martin Luther King nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, which always strikes me. If you've never read his books, they're simple, they're sounding, that they use like a childlike, it's like you're reading a children's book, but they're incredibly profound. So we're honored today to have a Zen Buddhist priest do our benediction. Many of you know Reverend Dr. David Zuniga, excuse me. My tongue quit after I finished sermon. It's already gone home for the day. But I asked him if he would do a kind of, brief Buddhist meditation. And in the class today that he was talking about, Thich Nhat Hanh, he did a prayer that was sort of an I am saying. And I've seen a lot of that in Hinduism. I was surprised to find it in Taoism. And I'd forgotten that Thich Nhat Hanh has this wonderful poem. David, are you there to take us home?
I'm here. Yeah, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sorry. So I'm David Zuniga. I'm a Zen Buddhist priest, and I'm just really honored to be here with you all. I do want to say a quick note to just express my gratitude to everyone in St. Andrew's family. Very briefly, I'll share. Obviously, I'm friends with a lot of the ministers here at St. Andrew's, and honored to be with you all. And I had just texted some friends, I guess yesterday afternoon, and I just shared, because I didn't know if everybody at St. Andrews knew that Nobel laureate for peace, Buddhist monk, Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh had just died, and everybody at St. Andrews knew, and we were just texting back and forth, and they invited me to help facilitate the Sunday school this morning, and then Jim very kindly said, Dave, would you offer a benediction? And I was so honored to do that. And of course, I said yes. So I just want to share, it is true, Dr. Martin Luther King nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for the Nobel Prize, and I'm just very moved that a community of Christians would have a simple Buddhist monk on today. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. And as we have our final benediction, I invite you to take a moment and notice your body, notice your physical self, and take a moment to be kind to your body. Take a moment to be kind to your physical self. And even in your mind, notice if you can extend a thought and a feeling of compassion to yourself. And maybe take a moment to just breathe in and out in a way that feels natural to you. You don't have to breathe in any particular way. Just notice your breath and cultivate insight into what's happening for you in the moment. Notice your breath. Notice how you're feeling physically. Notice how you're feeling emotionally. If you have any thoughts, that's fine. That's normal. Let your thoughts be like clouds in the sky. The clouds come and the clouds go. The thoughts of your mind, these clouds, will come and go. Just let them be as they are. And as we're breathing and sitting together, may we experience the interconnection of all sentient beings. May we experience the interconnection that transcends the notion of life and death. May we experience compassion for all sentient beings. And may we experience compassion for ourselves. May we experience Thich Nhat Hanh in our heart. May we experience Jesus in our heart. And may we take this compassion and wisdom out into the world. Thank you, my friends.
We are the ones we've been waiting for. We can't hold back anymore. God, who is faithful, will give us all the courage to answer the call. These are the times we've been waiting for. We can't hold back anymore. God, who is faithful, will give us all the courage to answer the call. The courage to answer the call.
If you'd like to join us, please stay.